Welcome to Point of View, I'm Grant Mangan. In October's local body elections, Christchurch residents elected a new council and mayor. 50 days after the victory celebrations, we caught up with Christchurch Mayor Lianne Dalziel to find out just how the new council is settling in.
What were your initial thoughts when you found out that you'd been elected with such a huge majority?
Well, I was really pleased. I felt that the people of Christchurch had really spoken. You know, they had said that they wanted to see real change in the city, and so, you know, I feel like I've been elected with a mandate, but also an equal responsibility. So it's not just the mandate. The other thing that the people of Christchurch did was that they gave me a superb council. So it wasn't just about me being elected, it was about really a team who were able to come together pretty quickly and get on top of the issues.
Now, you mentioned the team, and it's interesting, isn't it, that all but one of Bob's so-called A team was swept away in the election. What conclusions have you drawn from that outcome?
Well, I think the people of Christchurch said that they wanted to have change, and so I think that there were some sort of touchstone issues in the last council, and you know, I always sort of say that there's only one person who voted for the pay increase for the last chief executive who actually got re-elected, and he kind of apologised for that and said he got it wrong, and I think people gave him another chance. So yeah, I think that there was a very clear line in the sand drawn by the people of Christchurch between the last council and this one.
Now, you said recently in your speech to the Labour Party conference that your councillors are a united team. So does that mean that the divisions of the past have gone completely?
Well, I think that the divisions of the past were played up by you know, a lot of people who had a vested interest in making it look worse than it was, and also to attribute blame where it didn't actually lie. I think that anyone who is leading a council, the mayor essentially, has to take that responsibility on board. And as far as I'm concerned, we are one team. There is no such thing as an A team and a B team. And in fact, you can't have that for a city that's been divided really by the impact of the earthquake. We've got people, you know, over in the west who've you know, sort of hardly seen much difference around them. I was talking to somebody coming up in the lift today, and there was they said that they'd had some friends who lived over Rolleston Way had come over to Parklands, which is over on the east side, and they were saying, "Oh, your roads are terrible. We didn't know they were this bad," you know. And I mean, there's somebody who actually only just moved to Rolleston recently, but lived on the west side of the city, just not even realising how bad it is over the east. And then, of course, we've got the Port Hills people, you know, who've just been in this terrible state of uncertainty, and I have to say that some of the announcements that have been made recently have just added to the stress that they've been under. So we've got people in different frames of mind, different states, and as I've been saying to a number of people, you can't always tell. It's not just the physical environment that's damaged around them. You know, there's a lot of psychological trauma still very evident in our city.
I want to pick up on that for a moment, actually. How much responsibility does the council have to kind of help people through those non-physical kind of the non-physical damage or problems? Because you refer to people sort of being psychologically, I suppose, damaged as a consequence of the aftermath of the earthquake. Is it the council's responsibility? Can the council do anything?
You can't ignore it. I mean, this is the thing that frustrates me, is that sometimes people make statements, you know, about, you know, this is an unprecedented event, and you know that you know we're helping people move on, and we've repaired this number of houses, and we've rebuilt this number, and we've done all this, laid so much pipe, fixed so much road. If we don't actually understand where people are up to, then they can feel utterly invisible in the process. So I actually personally think that the council has an enormous responsibility, but so do all the recovery agencies, to be utterly respectful of where people are at. You know, a little bit of empathy actually does go a long way, and I think that my experience over in the east has at least set me up to be a mayor who understands exactly what people have been going through.
Is your parliamentary experience helping you in this role now, because you've actually been in Parliament, you've been a Cabinet Minister, you understand how government, central government, actually works? Does that enable you to actually build a stronger relationship with government?
I would describe my political experience as invaluable, but particularly my ministerial experience. But it does mean it's a little frustrating for the people that work in this organisation, because of course I'm sort of want to say, well, this wouldn't be done this way if we were in Cabinet. You know, in Cabinet we would have X, Y and Z. So, you know, I have allowed a little bit of frustration to come out at sort of saying, well, why would I have a meeting with these people unless I'd had a full briefing on it where we're up to, and I don't mean a sit-down briefing, I think sometimes we speak at cross purposes. I mean just something in writing so I can read before a meeting and inform myself better. Some of the processes that exist here, that it's the same. You know, we had our first committee of the whole, the earthquake recovery, which kind of like blew the lid off Pandora's box, really. It was the sense of community frustration was palpable, and the issues that they brought to the table meant that I couldn't even complete the agenda of the meeting, and we've had to refer a whole lot of issues straight to the council meeting this week. But the thing with that letting off the lid was my understanding of the degree of frustration that people are feeling, and the fact that they're coming to the one place where they feel they've got a public voice in order to express that concern, even though they might not be our issues. Now that to me means that I want to bring my sort of extensive political experience to bear and say, well, actually if we could get the information from those community groups to start, and then get a report from council staff about where we're up to, we could actually engage in that environment in a public arena in a much more constructive way. So, you know, my first experience of a committee of the whole may not have been particularly edifying from a public point of view, but it's taught me a lot about what I could do to bring my own political experience to help this city get a public voice. I was talking to one of the former staff here who said that when he was working here, I can't remember how many years ago, but about 6 or 7 years ago, he had one layer of report before he would get to council. So he would be, you know, 2 steps down from a councillor. By the time he left, he was 5 steps down, but his job hadn't changed.
How well has the council been doing its community engagement, do you think?
I don't think anyone in the recovery's done a very good job of engagement, and I think it's because people don't understand what engagement means. So when I talk about community engagement, I talk about meaningful exchange. It's two-way street. It's people giving up ideas, it's getting feedback, it's then feeding back further on that. It's like having a dialogue. That's what engagement is. But what we have mistaken for engagement in this city, and central government and the council are both responsible for this, is just public information meetings where you go out, tell people what the decisions are, and then answer questions about the decisions. Now that is not engagement. And I learnt this really, really early on from the first public meeting that we had after the September earthquake, and we held it in Bexley, and we had 500 people crammed into the church hall, might have even been 600 people, so crammed into the church hall, and we had engineers explaining what had happened to the land, and then we had EQC, and the mysteries of the Earthquake Commission started to be unravelled at this first meeting. It was a really good meeting, but I remember the older guys standing up and saying, we knew that Pacific Park should never have been built there, and not understanding the importance of community knowledge, local knowledge in the planning process. So planning processes seem to be about developers versus council versus environmental interests, but the local knowledge is missing, and that to me is a gap that we can fill.
So does that mean that there needs to be a change of process, or is it even broader than that here at the council?
It's bigger than that. It's actually bigger than that, because it's not just, I mean, and all of us, not all of us, but a lot of the new councillors have been talking about participatory democracy and participatory budgeting, the way that people can actually have a direct say in how their rates are being spent, but also seeing them as much more engaged in decision making, you know, and as I say, in planning decisions. Local knowledge is core critical to getting good development decisions.
Now, a big restructure of senior managers is underway at the council. It seems strange to me that sort of a restructure would take place while there's no permanent CEO, because usually those sort of changes are part of the job description for a new CEO coming into the organisation. It's happening now in between permanent CEOs. So why is that?
We can't wait. We actually can't wait. So this is a restructuring that should have been done after the September earthquake. I mean, as soon as the September earthquake happened, somebody should have taken a leadership role and said, this is now no longer business as usual. This is now a new way of operating. The recovery function could have been led by a manager specifically appointed for the purpose. I did actually suggest that perhaps it should be one of the heads of one of the council organisations, and I did actually suggest that Roger Sutton might be a good one to be putting up for that idea. So yeah, you heard it here first. But I mean, again, I mean that was in early February that I was making those suggestions. So I took a while to come up to speed as well. But what the organisation should have done is that it should have set up a proper recovery function with a very strong leader of that recovery function, so that the rest of the organisation could focus on you know, the day-to-day operations and making sure that the organisation was up to speed. Because one of the things that would have had to have been obvious to anyone was that there was going to be a heap of consenting down the track, and we were actually letting our consenting accreditation fall off the radar, you know, and that should never have happened either. And central government knew a little bit more about that than they're letting on, but there we go.
Given everything that's gone on within the organisation over the last few years, do you have confidence in a general sense in the staff and in the organisation to actually deliver the things they need to do?
I actually do. I mean, I've just been overawed really by the incredible institutional knowledge and capacity within the organisation. I think there are a couple of areas where things have kind of got off track in the sense that there's been so many layers of management that people have to get through. I mean, I remember I was talking to one of the former staff here who said that when he was working here, I can't remember how many years ago, but about 6 or 7 years ago, he had one layer of report before he would get to council. So he would be, you know, 2 steps down from a councillor. By the time he left, he was 5 steps down, but his job hadn't changed, you know. So it was this layer upon layer of middle management that kind of, and it did mean that people felt a lot more distance from the governance of the organisation, and it also felt, and this is just reflecting on what others have said to me as well, that they couldn't really suggest improvements or better ways of doing things because they felt that they would either be knocked back or that they would be seen to be speaking out of turn. And that sort of layer of, I don't know, I mean, I honestly think that an organisation works best when people at whatever layer they're in know that they can express an opinion and have it push its way to the top if that's where it's needed to be. People forget that if we don't repair the town hall, we don't actually get all the insurance money that would be available to repair the town hall. We would then fall back to indemnity. So yes, you didn't know that, did you?
No. Were you worried before the election about the council's finances, or have you found out something since you were elected that's caused you concern?
I said during the campaign that I wanted to do an opening of the books exercise, and I felt that I couldn't do that with an organisation that was local and integrally involved with the council, and I couldn't do it internally. So I was always going to bring in someone from the outside. And actually the primary motivator for Kora Mentha is that they're used to writing plain language reports that non-professionals can understand. And I want to be able to put out there in the public arena exactly the true state of our financial affairs and the agreement that we've reached with central government and what its implications are. Now, it's going to take a little bit longer than I was hoping, but we will have a preliminary report out before Christmas.
Are all the financial issues earthquake related, do you think, at
Pretty
this
much,
stage?
pretty much, and largely embedded around the insurance issue and how much we're going to get for different assets and how that insurance money will be applied. And a lot of that's covered by the cost sharing agreement with the government.
Now, you mentioned that cost sharing agreement. In the last week, there's been some discussion around whether that might need to be renegotiated. Is that your feeling at the moment, that maybe it wasn't the best deal possible, and that once you've got all the information from this analysis that Kora Mentha are doing, that it may be necessary or even essential for the council to go back to the government and say, look,
yeah,
sorry, but
I'm kind of deliberately staying away from the discussion as to whether something needs to be renegotiated. Obviously, two parties to an agreement can renegotiate. There have been areas of slippage already. I mean, one of the assets to be built, one of the anchor projects, I think, has been deferred by 12 months, and it doesn't appear that that was negotiated. It's just happened. So, you know, there probably is a bit of a conversation around how we manage the relationship given the agreement. That's going to be an important part of the discussion that we have with central government, but I kind of don't want to have that conversation until I've got a better idea overall about where we stand.
Would you be open, however, to getting the council to revisit some decisions? I'm thinking, for example, of one of the decisions that the former council made at the very end of their term around the town hall, for example, for which there were lots of conflicting opinions as to
what I would love to see is I'd like to see all of the town hall facts on the table. See, at the moment, it seems to be linked to the performing arts precinct in a way that is not clear. So I don't know what all the facts are, and we're having a briefing as a council on this, I think sometime in the next week or so. So I certainly want to get my head around all of the issues, but it does appear that when we're having a conversation about the town hall, people forget that if we don't repair the town hall, we don't actually get all the insurance money that would be available to repair the town hall. We would then fall back to indemnity. Yes, you didn't know that, did you?
No.
And did you also know that the town hall actually comes with land? It is built on land. So if we built somewhere else, the government has to pay for the land. And actually, they will compulsorily purchase that off a group of business people who want to build a development on the other side of Victoria Square. So nobody seems to be taking into account that actually this is going to cost the taxpayer a whole stack of extra money if we don't repair the town hall. So all I'm saying is that I don't have a fixed view. I just want people to understand what all the facts are before we make any decision to review a previous decision.
Now, you were a forceful advocate for Eastern Christchurch while you were the MP there. How do you view the East now that you're actually the Mayor of Christchurch and you're having to look at all of the city?
Well, I still look at the East and think that it could be a wonderful recreational place for the whole of Christchurch. So, and it could lead our economic recovery of tourism through ecotourism. We could have the largest natural wetlands in a city boundary anywhere in the world. I mean, I'm making that up, but you know,
it's a nice idea, though, isn't it?
Well, Jerry Brownlee made the point the other day that the residential red zone land is 4 times the size of Hagley Park. And when you think of it in that context, then you start to realise what an asset it is. And I know that we will want to find a way of engaging the wider public in that conversation. But once we start talking about potentially lakes and things like that, which could address some of the hydrology issues around the river and of course our very high water table out there, we could start thinking about restoring some equity to some of the land that's been lost out there as well. And some property owners are feeling like they're being left high and dry. In fact, they're the complete opposite. But you know what I mean.
Yes.
So maybe we could start to address some of those bigger issues by developing amenity that's of value to the whole city. So I think, I think that the East have done well to have a mayor who actually fully appreciates the importance of the East. It's not a trade-off for the rest of the city. It's just an imperative for the whole city that we get this right.
Do you think the council had done enough for the East in the past, post-quake?
Well, I think that there have been, I think there have been some challenges there that they've kind of missed the point of. They've really missed the importance of communication again, but this is joined up communication. So the first joint newsletter that has gone out since we've been elected has been for Port Hills residents. So, and I signed that off with Michelle Mitchell, who's been the acting chief executive while Roger Sutton's been away. And that newsletter came out of a briefing that we had held here. Ruth Dyson brought her constituents in from the Port Hills. I arranged for all of the councillors that represent the Port Hills, and there's 5 of them, to be here in the room. And I mean, I know that the councillors have heard the story before, but you know, I was just really, really taken by the poor treatment in terms of communication that they've had to suffer, really. And so one of the things that we committed to at the meeting was to get a communication out, and they agreed that it should be joint. I didn't have the agreement of Sarah to do that at the time, but they have come on board. And you know, although it's just going to be a regular update, and I think what's important is giving people access to information, no spin, you know, not a PR exercise, just quality information that they can rely on a regular basis. And I want to do that for the flood zone people as well.
You've been in the job for 50 days.
Yes.
And I was thinking, wow, that went pretty quickly. And then I thought, well, it seems to me that it's gone very quickly, but what about you? Does it feel as though it's been a whirlwind?
You would have, yeah, it was the whirlwind. It's exactly the word that I used, yeah. And it has been a whirlwind. I mean, it's like there's so much to be done. We need to, and I made the point at a meeting I was just at recently, I said it's not a question of re-establishing relationships, it's actually establishing relationships. The last council really had separated itself from all of the strategic partners, and we're having to build relationships from scratch. All of us have got the energy for that because we know how important it is, and we will continue to do that. But our communities are really important as well, and we are very, very aware that we've got this enormous responsibility. No pressure.
Lianne, thank you very much. We've taken up far too much of your time. We better let you get back to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This week's guest was Christchurch Mayor Lianne Dalziel. I'm Grant Mangan. Join us for the next Point of View.